So many markets across the world are monopolized, and to be quite frank, the consumer is paying the price for that. Sphinx is an effort to democratize access to the commodities trading world and the derivatives that power it. These assets never stop moving, and they deserve a market that also never stops moving.
People would say, well, no, these are on exchanges, and we can see the price every day on Bloomberg, but you're saying there's a lot of control in this centralized power.
The powers that control these assets and control the exchanges that trade them, they have no incentive to evolve on behalf of the consumer, and that's really where we saw not only the problems, but also the opportunity. The time for disruption is now, and we're really excited to be at the forefront of that.
What do you think this looks like a year from now if you get it right?
We decided to build our own layer 1 blockchain. I want to see the next NASDAQ built on this infrastructure. I want to see the next NYSE for trading securities. If we can become the ecosystem and the infrastructure for traditional finance, that's the dream, that's the goal. And if we really want to go compete with the big boys, there's no choice.
The quote from one of my mentors, talk is cheap, but it takes money to buy whiskey in West Texas. You better have something to back up what you're gonna do.
We're not another DeFi exchange. We are truly creating something new. There's so many great people surrounding this thing, and I can't thank my team enough, because when we do launch, everybody's gonna be blown the hell away. It looks incredible, it works great, it's gonna be really crazy, and it's gonna change the world.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. You probably know that we've just recently been re-platformed on YouTube after 25 months completely in the dark. The truth is, I really need your help. What I really need you to do is click on that subscribe button right now, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment or share the link with friends. We're really fighting against an algorithm that's tried to keep us quiet for so long, and the more subscribers we have, the more people watch our content, the better guests we can bring you, the better content, and we can continue transforming lives. We've been doing this for 14 years now. I want to do this for another 14 years, but I really need your help. So click on that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, share this, and we're going to continue to bring you more and more great content. Thank you. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Greg Perrin, the engineer, technologist, and blockchain expert. You are the co-founder and CEO of Sphinx, a next-generation trading platform built on the blockchain that provides 24/7 access to global energy and commodity markets. Sphinx is making trading faster, easier, and more accessible, eliminating delays and high costs to create a seamless, secure experience anytime, anywhere. You believe that decentralized technologies have the power to reshape global markets and have said that bringing traditional assets on-chain is the next trillion-dollar opportunity. You've said that if we want to see mass adoption, blockchain should be like the plumbing in your home, essential but unseen. Ultimately, you believe that 2025 will be the year decentralization stops being a buzzword and starts eating the world. Greg, welcome to London Real in Dubai.
And Brian, thank you so much for having me. So grateful to be here and been looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I want to start by saying that Sphinx is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures, the world's first media-powered investment firm, where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Greg, super excited to be part of this journey with you. So let's jump in. What is Sphinx?
So Sphinx is an effort to democratize access to the commodities trading world and the derivatives that power it. You know, commodities in particular are an asset class that are produced and consumed 24/7, right? These markets do not stop, they do not stutter, all the way from the production at the oil pump to the consumption at the gas pump. These assets, they never stop moving, and they deserve a market that also never stops moving. At the end of the day, the traditional exchanges that have ultimately led us to this point in history are built on traditional banking rails. And the reality is those banking rails are evolving with the evolution and technology that blockchain is kind of bringing to the forefront now. So, we're witnessing such a shift in the way that banking is done. And blockchain has been such a, it's provided so many opportunities to so many people across the world, right? It's really banking the unbanked. It's providing, lending opportunities and opportunities for entrepreneurs across the world, right? And, we in the Western world, especially as an American, right? Like we take that for granted. We really do. And, the ability for folks across the not only the geographical spectrum, but the geopolitical spectrum to be able to access those kinds of banking rails has ultimately created a paradigm shift. And markets are now attaching to that shift, right? Securities, treasuries, bonds, even traditional crypto assets, meme coins, and commodities are simply another asset class that we believe is poised to be revolutionized and disrupted by these new banking rails. The reality is so many markets across the world are monopolized. Commodities are one of those markets, and to be quite frank, the consumer is paying the price for that.
It's interesting you say monopolized, because people would say, well, no, these are on exchanges and they're publicly traded, whatever that means, and we can see the price every day on Bloomberg, or we can read it in the paper, old school way. But you're saying there's a lot of control in this centralized power.
Yes, and a lot of that control is paid for, right? It's lobbied for, and as markets evolve and mature, some of that control is warranted. But we have gotten to the point in the evolution of these markets in particular where that is now harming the consumer, and the powers that be, the powers that control these assets and control the exchanges that trade them, have no, they have no incentive to effectively evolve, right? So the time for disruption is now, and we're really excited to be at the forefront of that.
Nice. So it's interesting. If we look at crypto markets, it's something that I would argue maybe pretty much everyone in the world has access to all sorts of different exchanges and ways to trade their crypto, whether on a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange. If I look at stocks, whereas 20 years ago this might not have been the same, but now we see things like Robinhood, or we see these low-cost brokerage houses, and okay, you might not get the high-frequency trading access, but you also, I think, have some access. But when it comes to commodities futures, we are talking even further down that spectrum of the public or individuals getting access to true liquid markets. Is that a rough idea?
Yes, and you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And when you actually step back and view the forest above the trees, it's insane. It's insanity, because energy, agriculture, like these are the most traded markets in the world. They power your everyday life, whether you realize it or not. And they're so critically important to, I guess, the world evolution of health and happiness, and ultimately bringing, life and prosperity to the globe, which, I view as holistically important, and I hope everybody who's watching does. But at the end of the day, we need to ensure that these assets can be accessed in a democratic way and in a way that is free and doesn't impede on progress, right? And so much of the current system does impede on progress, right? There isn't as much of a free flow from an economics perspective as there should be. And that's a real problem, right? Especially for such critical things like energy, right? It's crazy when you really step back and think about the fact that there is a noose around, the control and the flow and the trade of these assets.
Right, because it's the big institutions that get access to these liquid markets and the individuals and the smaller players that don't, and it's not traded 24/7.
Yeah, exactly, right? This idea of, being able to speculate, being able to hedge, simply being able to trade across borders and boundaries, it's become more and more important in physical markets, right? Cargo markets, trade markets, like anything that kind of transcends that import-export barrier. Why are we so far behind on the basics? It's actually, it's disturbing, and it's really, the mission and the reason of why Sphinx exists.
It's a great question, and it's one of the reasons we were excited to be a part of your journey and as investors and everything we're doing for you, because we didn't see many of these come on our table. In blockchain, everyone's doing all sorts of different things, but I told the team, I remember, Greg, a couple weeks ago, I said, we're not gonna see another energy derivatives blockchain-based exchange in this bull market. So let's do this, because this is something we don't have in our portfolio, and it's something that needs to be done by a bunch of guys who know what they're doing. And it's really refreshing to see it. And again, I don't see a lot of people coming from it. I want to get into your background later, because that will explain to everybody why you chose this problem. It's kind of scratching your own itch. But you mentioned putting things on the blockchain, and I thought of BlackRock. BlackRock and Franklin Templeton have their own systems, and they're putting treasuries on the blockchain, and they're trying to really get some of these banking assets on the blockchain. When you are trying to build a blockchain-based, derivatives and commodities exchange, do you consider that an RWA play or a real-world asset play, or is it not necessarily?
So, blockchain and the finance world in general have this funny habit of trying to confuse the consumer by calling a nascent or new asset class something that already exists or something that it's not, right? Like RWAs, right? Real world assets. Like, I guess the first and foremost, do you consider a treasury a real world asset, or is that something that's been artificially invented by a government to fund their growth, right? So already you kind of have this confusion between okay, what is real in the real world? But we take, at least internally, when we started to consider, bringing these RWAs on chain, or that's what the industry is calling them now, and I'll put this in air quotes for the moment. But when we started to consider putting RWAs on chain, we kind of developed a thesis around tokenization when it comes to the existence of them in terms of their lifetime, right? Like, assets that are ephemeral or, have effectively a short shelf life, especially for buoyant and liquid markets, these are very, very difficult to tokenize at scale, right? When I start to consider a barrel of oil or a bushel of wheat, to effectively tokenize, 1 million or 10 million or even $50 million, I can do that, right? That's not necessarily what I would consider difficult. You find the right players, you find the right ways to verify, and then all of a sudden you can cryptographically secure these assets on chain. But the problem, really is that these markets are so big compared to the crypto markets, right? Crypto right now, in terms of its real market cap, is about 3 trillion. On the notional is much higher when you start to consider all the derivatives, but the notional value of energy, it's a $130 trillion market. Like, you start to think about tokenizing that, and you go start talking to the Shells, the Conocos, the BPs of the world, and all of a sudden you realize that, hey, even if we could tokenize this, what is the point if that barrel of oil is going to be pumped out of the ground and then consumed in a short period of time. And the same goes for agriculturals. What's really fit for tokenization are long, kind of like long tail assets, right? The treasuries, the bonds, the real estate, things that have this longer shelf life. They're so ripe for tokenization. And that's really what the industry has focused on up until this point, right? The BlackRocks of the world are tokenizing money market funds, treasuries, bonds, all the things that you previously mentioned. But these short tail assets and these short tail commodities, like they have effectively been ignored because no one has thought through the mechanics of what tokenization looks like. And even when we were starting Sphinx, we did go talk to Shell. We went and talked to BP. We went and talked to all these major players, and we really came to the thesis that you can bring something on chain without tokenizing it. You can bring a very transparent, clear trade execution, clearing, and settlement mechanism when it comes to the trade life cycle of some of these assets without having to necessarily tokenize them. And we think that so many projects, especially that are dealing with commodities, have taken a misstep in this because, again, and investors have been short-sighted in this as well, in the sense that, again, to create a small market with these tokenized assets that are short tail, it's not necessarily a trivial problem. But when you start to consider the actual size that you would need to power a global marketplace for something like spot or derivatives, we believe it's a zero-sum game.
Okay, I like that, because sometimes in this space you get people that are tokenizing just for the sake of tokenizing and put it on the blockchain just to say they put it on the blockchain, and there's no point in it, right? They're just riding maybe the latest buzzword.
Yes.
But it actually doesn't make practical sense.
No, it doesn't. And, the finance industry that we are trying to disrupt, there's a lot of things that, that they've gotten wrong in the evolution of their business. But one thing that they did get right is, creating digital representations of physical assets. Like that's, it's something that, again, people are attaching to because it is the, flavor of the week.
Okay, and they've done that really well because you have a futures contract with a ticker symbol, and commodities markets have done that effectively. Banking has done that effectively in the past.
Yes, and our goal is to be able, there's a couple of things you need to be able to build a new market within an exchange itself, right? And I talk about the market as in let's say I want to create a market for lithium or another energy adjacent asset, for instance, that might power an EV battery or, be used in what you would consider broadband energy production 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years into the future. The reality is you need, of course, a stable method for discovering price, and then you need liquidity. If you can get the recipe for those two things correct, you can create any market in the world that effectively is physical, and you want to transcend across that digital boundary.
Okay. Now, can you tokenize a perpetual future, something that is going to be alive forever? And does that make sense?
You can, but you have to ask yourself, why would you, right? Because the futures contracts, when I purchase a futures contract on the CME, for instance, right? Like the majority of the volume is done monthly, right? Like you have to ask yourself, why would I tokenize something that's only going to exist for a month and then it's going to roll over to the next month, right? And then the micro futures that exist weekly, or even the 3-month futures. If you have an asset that's going to exist 3 months, you have to ask yourself, is it worth tokenizing, and can I create enough, or can I get enough legitimate players to the table that would verify that asset as legitimate, right? And that's where you have to stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, what are we trying to do here? Like we're trying to create a tradable market. Like the verification of these assets is rooted in people's belief in it, which comes from the liquidity, and then it's rooted in the price, which also, that's effectively determined by the community. That's determined by the market. It's not determined by Shell or by Exxon. And that's really, when we step back and realize that, that was kind of an aha moment for us. We were like, wait a second. Again, you kind of got to, especially the investment community is going to try to pigeonhole you into doing something. Your community that you're listening to for product feedback is going to try to pigeonhole you into doing something. But this is the correct way forward. We're 100% sure of it.
Okay, and so I know you're talking to all sorts of partners right now and talking to maybe some regulators. What do you think this looks like a year from now if you get it right?
So We're very pleased that not just in the United States, but across the world, we're experiencing a shift towards regulatory clarity when it comes to things like stablecoins and exchanges. One year from now, we would very much hope that, we are and become an institution that is recognized, and that mid and especially larger entities that span the trading spectrum, and this includes, quant firms, prop shops, big banks, like that, that class of investor, trust us, right? And anybody can go create a market, but again, ultimately crypto right now is, playing with monopoly money when we need to be going to Caesar's Palace and playing with the big boys, right? And that's really what I hope to see as the evolution, not only in the next year, but the next 5. And, regulation, it takes time. Getting governments on board takes time. We've really been so...
How do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside, I view, is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the Investment Club.
We've been so pleased with what we've been seeing, and the FCA in particular, right, which is the Financial Conduct Authority out of London. We brought this product to them about 15 months ago, at the beginning of last year, and they laughed us out of the room. They were like, "No fucking way, we're not touching this." And then
Blockchain, they didn't like blockchain or crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's like not even that they didn't like it, but I don't think they understood it. And some of that, the community drives the regulator's attention, right? Like all of a sudden you had this shift where, again, the BlackRocks of the world were bringing in RWAs on chain, which forced them to take a closer look. But then the FCA, even with no influence from us or from any of our partners, came back to us and said, "Hey, we think we can regulate this. We want you to come be part of the Innovation Pathways program," which is effectively a digital sandbox as well as a direct access point to regulators to help push products like ours through the keyhole of regulation to influence mass adoption, right? And there are so many organizations in the world that use that as a, kind of use that as a flag in the sand to even justify access, right? I can't go to the Goldman Sachs of the world without that. So, we want to continue to be on the forefront of those conversations. We want to help shape policy. And at the end of the day, everybody in crypto is scared, at least what I would consider, the consumer community, right? Like they're frightened of regulators, and rightfully so, right? With, especially with the previous administration, all the Wells notices that were handed down, and all of the issues with Coinbase and Uniswap and all of these ultimately wonderful companies that are pushing the envelope to be regulated the way they have and relegated the way they have. The community was fearful, but it is a matter of education. Again, we're seeing this very historic deregulation, not just in the U.S. but across, I think, global markets right now. And again, our focus is on ensuring that we can bring this industry into the next century in a way that's not only responsible for the institutions, but responsible for the consumers too, right? Because consumer protections are important, right? We've seen so many instances across, across history, from the advent of Dodd-Frank to the collapse of companies like Enron that really, really harmed consumers. So it's not like the regulators are wrong in their in their fear and in their approach, but they do take massaging to understand what we are ultimately bringing as benefit, and that's something that again we're so focused on as an organization, right? And I do think it's something that sets us apart.
Okay, so the FCA is coming around and asking you questions and inviting you to be part of their digital sandbox, which is super cool. In the US, you mentioned, since the new administration, we've seen lawsuits dropped against Coinbase, against Gemini.
Uniswap's just got dropped.
Okay, nice. Uniswap, Robinhood, and a few others, I think, which is really encouraging. How are you finding the regulation in the US at this point? I know it's still early, but what do you think it might go?
When I started my journey in crypto, which was back in 2015, where it again was this very pirate-like industry, and then it became almost taboo, right, to work in it, especially as a U.S. person's, right? If you're
getting debanked,
if I go tell my traditional finance friends that I work in crypto, they're like, I don't want to necessarily associate with you too. Then all of a sudden, it evolving to this place where it's becoming more widely accepted. I couldn't be more excited about that, right? Like as a U.S. person's, like I love doing global business. I love global people. I'm very much a globalist, but at the end of the day, I want to be able to bring that technology home. I want to be able to go home and hang out with my family, my parents, my friends, and to even have the opportunity to be able to do business in the U.S. is so exciting to me. And I do think that the SEC and the CFTC are starting to come around, and some of that is due to the new political administration in the executive branch, but some of that is also just the force of the consumer. The consumer is so important, and thank God that we live, in a society where that voice is heard and understood, and really helps shape a lot of policy.
I mean, I think it was all of the pro-crypto candidates got elected.
Yes.
At least that's what Stand for Crypto and these other lobbying groups said, and I think the Stand for Crypto and some of those other groups really showed how powerful they are, and I think people are scared of them a bit in DC, and I like that.
Stand with Crypto it's a beautiful organization, and their tactics were excellent, right? So Stand with Crypto was, excuse me, they were sponsoring watch parties for all of the debates, and what they would do is they would give out, if you agreed to host a watch party, they would give you a $50 gift card for pizza, for California Pizza Kitchen or Domino's or whatever. And so all of the people across the U.S. were having these like huge watch parties to especially the pro crypto folks who knew what Stand with Crypto was, which was I'm sure Coinbase was probably one of the main funders, but man, they got very creative with how they attracted the public's attention, and they did such a great job with it. Again, I hosted the watch parties, right? I didn't even care about the pizza. I was just like, hey guys, let's all come actually learn about this and listen to it. And I don't even I live in Denver, right? But I don't live in a New York or Chicago or one of these main financial hubs, and I do go there quite often. But even being able to educate my friends, my neighbors, the folks that are I guess in my very close orbit on a day-to-day basis was, it was very encouraging.
I had the woman that orange pilled Donald Trump here in that chair about 2 weeks ago. Her name is Tracy Hoyos Lopez, and she was one of the people, along with the guy that runs the Bitcoin conference, that got him to Nashville and got Trump the check for $25 million, which was the biggest industry check he received. At least she's pretty sure about that. And she was just talking about the process, and then they ran the crypto ball in DC. And again, really told people that, hey, this is important, and if you don't vote for crypto, then we know that, and we're going to lobby against you. And she was pretty resolute when it came to the results they had, and she said it was amazing to see who showed up to that crypto ball, because there's a lot of parties happening, and a lot of congressmen and senators came there. And she's like, yeah, time for you to kiss the ring. That's what she said. And I was like, okay, I understand how you feel, because if you're in the US the last few years, I mean, like you said, you've been doing this for almost 10 years. It's frustrating that something you're so passionate about, that you see as an instrument of freedom, which the US is the one country in the world that should idolize, being demonized. And also the SEC prosecuting and persecuting people. It must be a nice feeling to see that it's kind of finally being acknowledged.
Yeah, it's such a breath of fresh air, and we have now family and friends in my orbit, my partner's orbit that also own a big chunk of Sphinx, and again, this is like real people's livelihoods you're playing with, right? And it's real people's freedoms, and it can't be overstated that the U.S. needs to become a leader to bring that innovation back there, right? So much of the innovation in this industry has gone overseas and gone abroad. So much of the talent has gone overseas and gone abroad. And again, as a globalist, I think that's partially a good thing. But the U.S. is, it's fallen behind in so many ways, and this is just another, check in that column that's, going to lead to undesirable outcomes 5, 10, 15 years into the future.
Yeah, it's like the single biggest evolution of technology in human history, or in the last 200 years, that the U.S. didn't dominate.
Yes.
It's pretty much true. And it's such a missed opportunity. You might argue is one of the greatest inventions of all time. You could say It's more important than the wheel and the fire. It's how humans provide value to each other. And yet the U.S. missed it, or is in the process of missing it. So it's great to see it coming around. I want to get back to what Sphinx looks like in 1 year. If I had to drill down and see what are you guys actually doing, what would I see? Would I see billions of contracts being traded on certain energy derivatives, on certain futures contracts? What would it actually look at like from, say, a consumer perspective or an energy producer's perspective? What do you think it looks like?
So, I do want to take a second and talk about energy as a whole, right? So much of our team and so much of my origins come from the energy industry, right? So we chose strategically that as an asset class, not only because of our connections and our deep understanding, but also because, energy producers are, they're some of the first pioneers and some of the first cowboys, right? When you look at how the oil industry evolved in the US, right? Like the folks that were out, drilling, they have an attitude about them that leads and, I don't want to say incentivizes, but innovation is in their blood, right? I would not argue the same for farmers, right? Farmers, it's a little bit of a slower industry. It's in our opinion, it would have been much harder to penetrate. So we decided to focus on energy in a big way. And the reality is the world's transitioning away from oil and natural gas, right? As the clean energy revolution continues to gain steam, and that not only includes the markets, but the infrastructure, everything from EV batteries to hydrogen cars to the solar and wind industries. Our goal is to, as an exchange, ensure that these assets are tradable, and are tradable in a way that they really weren't before, right? Again, the entire market system has been built on this, kind of this 5-day-a-week, 9-to-5 outlook, and the reality is the energy doesn't move like that physically, right? So our goal is to look at the physical side of energy and really fuse the derivatives market and the physical markets into a single global marketplace. And if I had to look a year out, right, we are focused on oil and natural gas first because they are the dominant, the dominant assets in terms of volume and in terms of adoption. But solar, wind, and then energy adjacent, rare earth minerals, again, lithium, cobalt, all these things that go into producing EV batteries, hydrogen. We want to be able to create stable, buoyant, liquid markets for these and allow folks to access them across the globe in a 24/7 environment. It's so critical for our evolution and the evolution of these markets. Once we have stability when it comes to energy trading, that's when we will move to agriculture. That's when we will move to precious metals. That's when we will move to other commodities. But as a startup, you have to stay focused, right? We can't conquer every mountain at once, and we've really decided to focus on energy as an asset class.
So I was just having flashbacks to the movie There Will Be Blood, which is about a guy drilling for oil. Yeah. And then I had also thoughts to the recent series Landman, which is West Texas and all the craziness that goes on there. I guess you got some cowboys there, but I'm assuming in that industry, if you don't innovate, you die.
Yes, and it's
it's all about tech.
It is, and then like the oil industry is it's a boom and bust industry on the physical side, right? We during my time in the oil fields, we were actually using stranded natural gas to mine Bitcoin. That's how I actually got into understanding the energy industry at all. And you really start to see, through that lens or that magnifying glass that, the ability to compete, and it is a very competitive industry, is built on new technological advances, right? So, these guys are very keen when it comes to the adoption of products like ours. And at the end of the day, we think that, we think this is such a critical piece that's going to just propel the industry forward in such a huge way, right? I mean, I'm not talking about a 1x or a 2x gain. I'm talking about a 100x efficiency gain, right? A 100x decrease in trading cost and a 100x, more efficiency when it comes to how these things are, being traded between people. And that's, I believe as a startup founder, and I've been an entrepreneur for almost my entire career, right? I didn't, take necessarily a traditional career path out of school, and it is that efficiency gain, right? Like the ability to be able to disrupt at that 100x level is so critical to a startup's success or potentially failure.
Yeah, 100x is huge, and I guess the blockchain has a big part to play in that. They always said in tech you need something 10x better to replace the incumbent. It's probably about right. In addition to the trading, you've got all sorts of other things that you're building, and then the blockchain can help you do better, including order book matching, transaction execution, clearing settlement, trade netting, cross-asset margining, client onboarding. And again, I remember when I was trading on Wall Street, I would call down to the Merc and place all my orders. And at the end of the day, I had to check all those trades. I had to go to my back office and they had to clear it. And these guys were making like, $4 a contract and just the clearing. There's all this stuff that happens behind the scenes that the consumer doesn't really know about that is super important. And there's a ton of, rent being charged on those things. And so I think one of the things that Sphinx is going to do is drop all of those costs significantly and speed up those processes and even make them better, right?
Yeah, we want to disintermediate and provide as much transparency and direct access to these markets as possible. When you go trade on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or the Intercontinental Exchange, or even as you go out into the east, the Guangzhou Commodities Exchange, the Shanghai Futures Exchange, they're all set up the same way, and they all suffer from the same inefficiencies, right? So being able to disintermediate, to be able to remove this layer of inefficiency, and a lot of that is provided by Advents and blockchain, that's really going to provide benefit that's ultimately passed on to the consumer, right? The reality is, right, even for oil right now on the CME, if you're a non-member on the CME and you have to be a member to trade directly, the cost is $1.50 a contract, and they're trading 6 million of these contracts per day, and that's just for one grade of oil. So, they're running one of the most efficient rackets in the world, best we can tell, and there's no competition. They have no incentive to evolve on behalf of the consumer, and that's really where we saw not only the problems, but also the opportunity. It's very, at the time that we were trading these things, we were so disheartened by not only the ability to access, and so much of our team came from trading crypto, and then we started to look at this and we're like, and as we started to do customer discovery with traditional energy traders and hire folks from that industry into our team, we were like, man, we were dumbfounded, right? We were flabbergasted by the realities of trading these things, right? And there's so much that goes into it, and it can be simplified so much. And that's ultimately benefit that we, as a company that wants to operate responsibly, we want to pass that benefit on to the consumer, right? Like that saving should be with the consumer so they can redeploy capital more efficiently. And so ultimately, the markets can become more liquid, more fluid. So much capital is locked up right now where it shouldn't be. And that's something that we really aim to change.
It's this narrative you hear constantly in blockchain is decentralization versus centralization. And we complain about the banks who kind of have captive customers. We complain about big tech who have these captive customers. And, it's interesting because blockchain I never thought about it going after the centralized exchanges. We think about these other places for information, but that's ultimately what that is. And then you go back to that innovator's dilemma. I mean, why would they innovate when their entire business model is based on that? And they always say, what's the other thing? It's very difficult to convince a man that what he's doing is wrong if that's where he gets his paycheck. And so you got these things working together, and I know these institutions, they're literally institutions. They are the place to go. It's the only shop in town, and it's been around for 100 years, and it's gotten really big the last 20, 30, 40 years. And it's hard to go up against that. Do you find this whole David Goliath thing, if somebody from the CME is watching us, are they going to think I want to not have Greg be successful?
Peter Thiel took $500,000 and turned it into $1 billion using the exact same techniques we're using inside the investment club. He met a CEO, his name was Zuckerberg. He pitched him the deal and he said, okay, I'll give you $500,000. Mark went public and sold the shares to people like you. Well, what happened to Peter? Well, he exited and got a 2,300x return. The wealthy invest in early stage companies, folks. The public markets are for suckers. It's a rigged game. By the way, this happens in crypto as well. It's called pre-sale tokens. This is Solana. Does anybody know this chain? They sold pre-sale tokens for 4 cents. And you can see the date on there, April 5th, 2018. Look at Solana today, folks. That thing's up over 1,000x. The media and Wall Street and all these hype people get you to buy the top. Meanwhile, they put their clients in at the bottom and they use you for liquidity to make their clients rich. You can play this same game. You just have to have the financial education and the deal flow. That's it.
We want to position ourselves, especially in the early days of this, to be an alternative and adjacent marketplace, not necessarily a direct competitor, right? Like the CME is an institution, and we want the CME to exist. We actually want the CME to exist because that provides the differences in price and in volume and in product from our exchange to theirs provides arbitrage opportunities for traders, right? And so much of that value can be captured, and that actually makes markets more efficient, right? Like that, the ability to discover prices across multiple exchanges makes markets more efficient, and it's so critical to market operations. And you see it very fluidly in crypto, right? If you have Bitcoin on exchange A trading at 90,000 and Bitcoin on exchange B trading at 85,000, like those markets equalize, right? And market participants that have access to both markets can actually earn very serious yield by trading across those exchanges, right? So it's good. It's very good for the traders that we have multiple marketplaces. And again, by offering a venue that is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that allows traders that traditionally trade on the CME to come offload risk, basis risk, asymmetric risk, whatever their risk is in that moment, or through their eyes. We need to ensure that, and again, I think it comes down to market responsibility to ensure that there's the ability to be able to kind of reduce that risk at the end of the day, right? And on the CME now, right, when an exchange closes, and you see this in the securities exchanges like the NASDAQ or the NYSE, and then you also see it on the commodities side, right? The exchange closes. Now, the pipe that takes orders on that exchange continues to take on orders, but nobody knows what the price is, right? So you have all of these traders submitting, and they think they may have alpha one way or another on which direction the asset's going to move. But at the end of the day, the inability to understand the price from the market's perspective causes huge gaps up and gaps down in the market. When you're staring at the trading screen and you see that big jump in the candle from Friday to Monday, like that inefficiency is represented there. And it's and again, like I think, blockchain provides this promise to help eliminate that. And it's, especially for something that's so critical to human survival like energy, right? Again, we got kids doing this with meme coins right now. Why the hell can we not do it with energy? It's bloody crazy.
Yeah, I've had this guy, Anthony Pompliano, on my show. And
we know Pomp.
Yeah, he's huge, and he always tweets out on a Sunday when there's like a big news event in the world. Of course, Bitcoin's reacting, and he's always like tweeting out like the bankers right now, just like their blood is boiling because they have to wait 24 hours to trade on this information.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous.
And it's and Bitcoin, thank God, like Bitcoin's become a proxy for the global markets when
it's the only liquid
closed.
instrument, right?
It has become a great proxy.
Yeah, but it's also it's not the right proxy sometimes. So it's like
it's the best they have. It's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's like bad news. They sell Bitcoin. It's like that's not really what you want to sell. You might want to sell the S&P. You might want to sell some other things. So yeah, it's a long time coming that this stuff needs to be 24/7.
Yeah, and we're very excited to be able to provide that. So much of crypto, not only from the innovative perspective, but also from the investment perspective, is focused on just doing the same thing over and over again, right? Like focused on creating the new L1 or L2, or
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Dubai real estate is exploding, and the biggest money is being made where almost nobody is looking, in premium luxury transformation projects that have historically delivered 40 to 90% annual returns. That is incredible. For years, these opportunities were locked inside private networks. You never saw them. You never had access until now. I've spent 15 years on Wall Street and 5 years studying Dubai up close. And today, for the first time ever, you can invest directly alongside my team. We have just received a brand new project with real potential for outsized returns. And early allocations always fill fast. Click the link and apply now. Your opportunity starts today.